welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is our monthly episode with the Kankakee County Museum, where we dive into something historic in our county's history. Before we get to today's topic, though, just want to remind you about some upcoming events happening at the Kankakee County Museum. If you happen to be listening to this before said events, we have Saturday, March 22nd. There's a celebration of Conscientious Magazine. Its 20th anniversary is happening at the Kankakee County Museum. This is with Aaron Robinson and Takara Robinson of Still I Rise. Actually, if you want to learn more about Aaron and Takara, and even the magazine a little bit, you can listen to their episode of Kankakee Podcast. But this is happening, as I said, March 22nd. It starts at 11 a.m. and goes on until 1 p.m. There is also the Mantino's Hidden Figures book Club happening Saturday, March 29th. That starts at 10:30 a.m. The 35th Annual Rhubarb Festival coming up Sunday, May 18th. There's so many events happening at the Kankakee County Museum. If you want to stay up to date on those, you can go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com or follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Kankakee County Museum. Don't forget, you can also sign up to become a member and get exclusive discounts on ticketed events. Also get free admission into both the Kankakee County Museum and the French Heritage Museum. And you get a discount in the store as well, a 10% discount. There's that incentive and so many others if you become a member of the Kankakee County Museum. And the most important thing with your membership is just to help keep history alive in our county. I'd like to welcome, as always, Jack Klasey and Jorie Walters. Welcome.
Thank you.
Always happy to be here. We have a good time when we do these sessions.
Always good to have both of you here as well. Actually, I feel like both of you have updates as well before we get into today's topic. Jack, a lot of people know you for your weekly column in the Daily Journal, a history column that usually is something historic in the area. Your column has actually moved.
Yes, it has. The new ownership of the Journal decided to cut a number of features and so forth, and unfortunately my weekly column on Saturdays was one of them. But immediately I was able to shift over to the museum, the Historical Society, which has a blog which was somewhat inactive for a while, so it was a perfect fit. So Let's Talk History is the name of the blog, and each Saturday I will be posting a history column. I think I didn't miss a step, in fact. I think there was no lag from one to the other.
It started right away,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So thank goodness Veronica Featherston said, yes, we'd be happy to host you on this. And for anybody wanting to reach that, it's fairly easy. The address is Kankakee County Museum, all lowercase, run together, dot.
WordPress, right?
Right, wordpress.com.
Yes.
Thank you. I went blank for a
No,
moment.
it's okay. Just want to make people aware, because I know even for those that they might listen to these museum episodes, and maybe they also consume your articles as well, and they're going to be like, where'd it go? What happened?
Yeah, I had a few emails like that from people saying, what happened to your column? And so I directed them in the right direction. So.
So just so you know, Jack did not stop writing.
That's right.
He's still going strong. And then Jorie has an exciting new series that just launched. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be last week. But you launched a new series with the museum that's a video series on YouTube.
Yep. We are Wednesday, and I will be going to different places. I'll be talking about things like we do here, but only I will take you there in video. And I started off with places at the museum campus, and then I plan to go in the community, and I plan to go county-wide.
That's awesome.
And take you to different places. I have a whole list of ambitious
Well, I'm so glad that you're doing that, because I had an idea for doing something like that, and I'm glad that you and the museum are doing that and, spearheading that show. And shout out to Chris Talkie, too, who is doing spearheading the video editing on all that. So
yeah, I don't understand a lot of new wave lecturing, so to speak, but he said just do the history. I'll take care of the rest.
Yes.
I can do that.
Wonderful. So those are just some things you can look forward to. If you can't get enough history listening to these episodes, you can go to these other places and these other formats to consume history. So what are we talking about today?
We are going to talk about a company that is probably one of the most well-named companies in the whole area. That was Roper. Bradley Roper, and I did find it was attached to another paper.
Right.
We had a Bradley Roper in Bradley, part of David Bradley Manufacturing. And then we had Roper on West 17.
I didn't realize, so David Bradley Roper was a division of David Bradley, or they just happen to be in the same?
No, actually, David Bradley was a division of Roper.
Oh, okay.
Actually, if we go all the way back, the connection that eventually became Roper has kind of a long, tattered tale through a period of almost a century.
Oh, I'm excited to learn about it then, because I didn't realize
when
that.
you begin to think in terms of how it affected the area as far as employment and so forth, in 1895, Herman Hardebeck, who was the founder of North Kankakee, new town just north of town, went up to Chicago and talked David Bradley into moving his plow factory down to this new town. And this was in 1895. Part of the deal was that the name of North Kankakee would become Bradley, and it has been ever since. Initially, and for many years, the Bradley factory manufactured plows, obviously, but also in later years, up through the time that it went out of business, it had many types of outdoor products, everything from barbecue grills to tractors to chick brooders and lawn tractors and so forth. But that was, of course, in Bradley, but North Street and Schuyler Avenue, basically. What we most readily connect with the idea of Roper is, of course, the huge site on the west side of Kankakee.
Yes.
I think it eventually came up to something like 35 or 40 acres.
Huge.
Yeah.
It was ginormous.
From Main Avenue, Easy Way, Bumps Road, all the way west from there and north of Station Street. And I think that Jorie could probably work from there on in and talk about what happened on the west side.
Yeah, I'm going to cover a little bit of the history before it became Roper. I'm going to read directly off, but I'm going to read a couple of things because I have a few different pieces of information that all kind of intertwine. All right, so 1902, Foley Williams Sewing Machine, player piano and organ manufacturing company was located where the Roper is on West Station Street. It was purchased in 1901 from 3-1 Railroad.
Yeah,
3-I Railroad.
Yeah.
And then it was sold, Foley Williams was sold a domestic sewing machine. And then the company purchases a defunct factory and uses it to house Easiest Way Stove Works.
Right.
Which was
that was the first stove manufacturer in Kankakee.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, and it all ties into Roper.
All right, so at the time, different companies, Bear Brand, Krahler, Florence Stove were in existence 1929. All right. So that's kind of some of the
interesting.
earliest.
There was another little side issue as far as the Foley and Williams factory. In 1908, a company called the McIntyre Watch Company leased some space in the building that Foley and Williams was in. They were an unusual. They made only in a period of, let's see here, probably 5 to 6 years. They manufactured only 8 watches.
That sounds like a cover-up business.
No, these were extremely high quality, handmade, everything done by hand, called fine American watches, and they were a professional watch people. For example, a railroad person would have a conductor or something that would have a watch of this kind. They eventually, unfortunately, in 1911, they were evicted from the Foley building for non-payment of their rent.
Well, if you only made 8 watches,
that could be.
That's not.
They went
not
into
high
receivership, and the company went out of business in 1911. Foley and Williams went out of business in 1913. They went bankrupt for some reason.
And they were the ones that made pianos, or they were the sewers?
I'm sorry?
They were the sewing company?
Sewing machine company, primarily sewing machine, domestic and Foley and Williams sewing machines.
And player pianos.
And player pianos, that's right.
Yes.
I'd forgotten about that.
Right.
In 1914, when Foley and Williams, right after they went bankrupt, Sears, Roebuck and Company bought the factory.
In Kankakee or in Bradley?
In Kankakee. No.
Okay.
No, Bradley at this time, for that period, was still Bradley Plow Works and so forth. They'd had a connection to Sears. Sears was one of their major competitors and I think owned part of the company. You'll find Sears woven in through all of these businesses through the time because they owned part of or all of an awful lot of factories that supplied them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that only makes sense. I mean,
they were a giant for...
They were the Amazon of the day, right?
That's right. They were.
That's what I always, I compare to people that don't really understand the significance of Sears. I say, well, Amazon, right? Well, they were like the Amazon
of
that time.
They revolutionized the
mail order
shopping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mail order.
Mail order, which was, of course, like the internet today as far as if you lived in the country, probably have to waste a whole day going into the nearest town to buy something, whereas you could have it ordered by mail and be delivered to your door within a couple of days.
Yeah.
Coming back to the empty factory, when Sears bought that empty factory, they had a company they wanted to move in there. It was over in Chicago Heights. It was called the Easiest Way Stove Company.
And what year was that?
It's 1914.
Okay.
So once they bought that, they moved Easiest Way in there, and the first stoves were produced in Kankakee by Easiest Way in 1915. They also made kerosene heaters, kerosene kitchen stoves, and camp stoves, kind of like, little portable stoves you could... If you're going camping.
And you hook up a little kerosene to it.
Kind of all new wave excitement of the day. Technology.
Right. That was a very cutting edge thing at that time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, Easiest Way, is we can date the manufacturer of stoves in Kankakee that eventually ended up being Roper from 1915 when the first one was produced here.
So after... Easy Wave, right?
Easiest Way.
Easiest Way.
Yeah.
So
capital E hyphen capital Z hyphen capital E lowercase xt.
Yeah. So when does it become Florence then?
It didn't. Jorie, do you have your number there?
About
here somewhere?
1914. Let's see.
I have a date of 1929 here.
Okay, 29. All right, so let's go back to 14. In March of 1914, the business was incorporated in Massachusetts under the name of Central Oil and Gas Stove, which that was Easiest Way, was later changed to that. The name was later changed from Central Oil and Gas Stove Company to Florence Stove Company in 1923. In 29, the company acquired easiest. Oh gosh. Okay, let's go back one more time.
All right. Yes.
It's confusing.
Okay. Yes, it is. All right. So, 1914, the business was incorporated in Massachusetts
Gardner,
under
Massachusetts.
the name
Yes.
Central Oil and Gas Stove Company. The name was later changed to Florence. 1923. 29, the company acquired the Easiest Way Stove Works,
Right.
stove manufacturing plant in Kankakee, Illinois, from Sears, Roebuck and Company. And in 1954, moved its main office to Massachusetts, from Massachusetts to Illinois. In 57, the company acquired the George D. Roper Sales Corp. And in 58, the name was changed from Florence Stove Company to George D. Roper Company to just Roper.
Right.
Okay. Does everybody have that now?
Yeah, the original name was George D. Roper, just GEO period D. Roper when they were in Rockford, but eventually it became strictly
But if anybody would like me to repeat all that, I'm happy to do so. I just need to replenish my throat now.
No, that's quite a timeline.
Yeah,
it is.
The Florence stove.
That's why I wanted to read it word for word, because it is.
And when we're talking about this, we're strictly just talking about the plant that was in Kankakee. We're not talking about the other Roper in Bradley, right?
Right. We're still talking. Yeah. In this point, the Florence stove and so forth, that's all the west side of Kankakee.
Because that's all they made there.
Right.
Right. It was
stoves
and
ovens and a few other odds and ends, but primarily stoves. Florence was headquartered in Gardner, Massachusetts. They also had a plant there, and they had another plant in, I believe, Tennessee. I'm not sure. Anyway, when they began producing stoves in Kankakee under the Florence brand, they also made a lot of it with the Kenmore, which was the Sears house brand.
Yes.
Kenmore was a very common name around Kankakee for various things because of so many products that were Sears sold or manufactured and sold. Eventually, as Jorie said, in 57, Florence consolidated its operations in Kankakee, and so they closed the Massachusetts and Tennessee plants and moved their headquarters here. I remember some of the people that I used to know at Roper still had had rather strong Boston accents.
Oh, okay.
I remember one of them who had he was I think it's a friend of ours, he and his wife, but his motto was always live east of the plant. And he had a reason for it. If you live east of the plant, you go to work in the morning, you're not driving into the sun. When you come home at night, you're not driving into the sun. Alfred Beltate was his name, and Al was a really neat guy.
Yeah, that's even that last name sounds very Boston, if you ask me. Gosh, that's funny. So it didn't become Roper until 1957.
Let's see here. True, yeah, that's right. Actually, what happened was Florence bought the George D. Roper Corporation up in Rockford and moved all its gas stove manufacturing product to Kankakee. I know that they produced, obviously, gas and electric ranges there, but they also at one point had microwave ovens. In the museum, we have a Roper microwave oven, probably the last one in the whole world that exists.
It's so funny you say that because I don't know. I'd have to ask and find out. But my son's mother, her grandmother, in her house, I think she still has a Roper range.
Could be.
And I think some type of microwave or microwave oven to go with it. But I haven't been there in a while. I'm usually only there like once a year for like Halloween to go trick or treating. And And I haven't been in the kitchen in a while, but I remember the first time I saw it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I was like, there is a roper in here. Right. And that just, it blew my mind just because, just like many others that are probably listening to this right now, my 3 or 4 of my grandparents worked at Roper, and just so many people.
My grandfather did when it was east, way of Florence, way back in the day. And he worked there he lived in Bradley, but before the Court Street Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And just when the other bridge was
in the late 60s, yeah.
That's going
Traffic
back
in the vicinity of the Roper plant, or actually Florence and Roper, was utterly incredible. And, of course, there was no Court Street Bridge most of that time.
So everyone's
going over Station Street.
On Station Street.
Yes.
And that was the only
good
bridge.
picture.
Yeah, that would have been the only bridge going that direction.
Next down would be Washington, and Schuyler.
Right, but that's going north and south.
Yeah.
So the Station Street
all that
bridge,
traffic coming off Station Street.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, Jorie has a picture here.
Okay. Oh yes. This is
back.
Yeah, that's the Kankakee plant.
1960s.
What year? 50s?
1960s.
60s. Yeah.
It's right there. This is the go around.
The buildings at the far right end are actually the Kankakee Foundry, which is a separate company, and they were separated from the Roper and complex by Main Street or Main Avenue, which again old timers always refer to it as Easy Way Bumps Road.
Easy Way Bumps,
because of the sort of short hills and railroad tracks and things there. And I guess a lot of teenage guys used to take their pickup trucks and their girlfriend along. And,
my dad included.
Yeah, and up and go airborne for a while, and you come back down and bouncing.
Man.
I said, Dad, how did your dates feel about that?
I'm sure they loved it.
He took the fifth, yeah.
He would take the fifth on that one.
Talking about microwave. Oh, I'm sorry, Jorie, go ahead.
Stoves.
Yes. There is, this is the main product line, of course, was stoves.
So
Kankakee plant.
So this was like an assembly line, kind of like for cars.
Oh,
right?
Right.
They
it was.
put these together.
Yeah, it was an assembly line type operation. Same thing in Bradley for like the lawn tractors and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So do we by chance have numbers on like approximately how many stoves they made, like at a time, or?
I don't think we have, but I know that
probably have come
coming
across
off the line, there were, I'm sure, hundreds a day.
Oh yeah.
Because again, their biggest customer was Sears, and Sears sold incredible numbers of. One thing that might give you an idea of the quantity involved. In 1951, there were January 1st. In fact, on New Year's Eve, or late New Year's Eve, early New Year's Day, a huge fire broke out in the Roper plant in their warehousing area at the far western end of the plant. They had, at that point, they were going to be shipping out the next day 17,000 stoves that were lost in that blaze, and about 14,000 of other products that they had.
It's amazing they continued on with that. I mean, that's a lot.
Oh, here we go.
17,000?
17,000. That was, they were going to be shipping them out to the first week of the year.
Do you remember what caused the fire?
I don't recall. Yeah, there's the warehouse burning. That's right.
There's the warehouse burning.
It's written by some guy named Jack Klasey.
I was going to say, that looks like a Jack Klasey article.
Yes.
And I did read it.
I think vaguely I remember something about an electrical malfunction of some sort.
Okay.
But
fire was discovered. Flames were burning the aisle of the warehouse. I'm scanning all the what I have in my notes about
the
fire, and I don't see a cause. I just see how much damage and the insurance covered it and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't see a cause. But I can come back to it. If somebody really would like to know, I can do further deep dive on it, research. Just let me know.
when I was researching that, whether the story ever did say what they expected the cause. It was just under investigation.
Yeah. So once Florence bought Roper, and then, it became Roper.
Right.
It's got what? In Kankakee, maybe another 20 years?
Until 1982.
Oh, it went till 82. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it stopped
82
in the 70s.
was the year that they stopped.
Okay.
We were talking before about David Bradley Company, how this fits into the thing.
Yeah.
Again, Sears pretty much owned a majority stock in David Bradley Company from about 1910 onward. And they manufactured a whole bunch of things there. I mean, for example, they produced chicken incubators in the 1920s, garden tractors called the Bradley Walking Tractor, coal stokers in 1937. 1952, they had a flyer in Dinette Furniture.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the old or stainless steel or aluminum and
I know exactly
sort of thing. Everybody
got
got the 1950s.
Yes,
dining
set.
dinette.
Yeah.
What else do we have? Oh, chainsaws, 1955, and riding mowers, the big one, which was toward the end. That was their biggest product, of course. And Sears loved them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
1958, and a short fling with barbecue grills in 1960.
And I have a picture of the David Bradley.
Oh, yes.
Roper.
Yes,
This is
at the street there. Yes, I'm trying to remember.
This one's
That's
Skylar
Washington,
right there,
isn't it?
I think that might be the street right in front of it.
Yes. Trying to think what that is.
And as you can see,
There's a trolley car.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there's a trolley
And there's
car.
a park.
Yeah.
I think that postcard is from about 1910. I think when Sears, as you can see on there, I think it says
The
Sears.
street in front is a dead end. The railroad is right there.
Right.
That's a dead end.
Yeah, and then
This is part of the city now, but it used to be a
IC
park.
tracks were on the west side, of course.
So in comparison, I mean, in obviously the David Bradley plant was a lot bigger. There was a lot more buildings.
Yeah.
But eventually, though, was it still a bigger facility than the Roper in Kankakee?
No, not really. That had much more room to spread out. They didn't have these went up 4 and 5 story buildings, whereas in Kankakee they were mostly at most two stories high, but it went out because they had plenty of room to maneuver.
They were constrained a little bit for David Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
So they went up. But
And by the way, and probably you know this, but if you're approaching the site on North Street, you can still see the name Sears Roebuck and Company on the 5-story building.
Yeah, it looks like sometimes I look at it and it's just blows my mind that it's still so readable as it is today.
This is David Bradley Farm in Plough.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Because of the fire. They had a fire there too, around 87, 88, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Huge.
I'll touch on that. That's a huge
and
fire.
It took out a lot of the buildings or building area.
I know for a couple of years, and I'm not sure how many years, the back cover, I think, of the Sears catalog featured a picture like that. It talked about our modern farm equipment plant in Bradley, Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's incredible.
And these are places that I'll take you on YouTube. Where we Wednesday.
Series.
I will go to like Dave in Bradley and take you to around it, to different locations around it, and I'll stand in front of the fence, the Kankakee Roper, and say this is what was behind me. But let's go back to World War II. Actually, that time period, World War II.
Oh, yes.
So many factories across the country had to go into double time for armaments. So they directed by the government to manufacture certain items for the war effort. And Kankakee Roper was no exception. In fact, they won an award for having
the Big E.
Yep, the Big E.
For excellence.
Yep.
And they manufactured armor plate for tanks and also 55 millimeter brass shells that were sent over to the
armory to get filled, right?
Yeah, over near Wilmington. I've gone blank.
Oh, yeah. Joliet Arsenal.
Joliet Arsenal. Thank you, Jorie.
Yes, Joliet Arsenal. Yeah.
Yeah, and they also made shells at the Bradley plant, I think. And they also won an award for their efficiency and so forth.
My dad told me that with the Joliet Arsenal, that during wartime, when that thing exploded, it jolted my grandparents out of bed, and they didn't know if we were being bombed.
Yeah, right.
They could hear it all the way down here.
Yeah.
And it really scared them.
Yeah.
I believe it.
I think it was 1942, if I remember 43. But anyway, it was such a big explosion, it actually cracked windows in downtown Kankakee.
Oh, my gosh.
Shop windows.
Wow, and that's really far.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, they got us in the middle of the Midwest.
And there were a number of the people that were killed in the explosion that were from Kankakee.
Right. I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. But we did our part for the war production.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, that's really a perfect fit. You know, instead of taking your steel and using it to make stoves and ovens and whatnot, you're using it to make tanks.
I'd like to jump back in a way too and make the connection we haven't made yet here since we began of how how Roper became involved with Bradley Factory.
Okay. Yeah, please.
In 1962, David Bradley Company merged with the Newark, Ohio Company, both of which were basically owned by Sears. They just merged the two of them. And the plant became the Bradley division of the Newark, Ohio Company. This is something not an awful lot of people remember because it didn't really last an awful long time. In 1966, Roper acquired the Bradley plant from Sears and entered the outdoor products market. So that's when, basically, 1966 is when Bradley became part of the Roper operation.
Okay. So now they were. Okay, that makes sense.
Started to make outdoor materials. Yeah, we had such a wide range, if you think about it, of materials that were being manufactured just within the two locations.
Oh, yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
not including all the other factories at the time that were producing.
But just between the two plants, and I mean, roughly how many people were they employing?
In the thousands.
Yeah.
Between the two, I don't remember a specific. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, combined Roper workforce, Kankakee and Bradley in 1978 was 2,800 people.
Wow.
But frequently the Roper Kankakee had a multi-thousand workforce.
Yeah, I believe it.
Bradley was a little smaller because they were more constrained, I think.
So Bradley, the Bradley location closed before the Kankakee one, correct?
In what terms?
As far as like the plant closing, the Bradley location closed up first, right?
Oh,
or what?
Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, in 1982, Roper closed its Kankakee plant and moved operations to Lafayette, Georgia. And I don't have a specific date on that, but in 1982, in October, Roper Bradley plant was deeded to the village of Bradley to develop as an incubator sort of situation.
And I think it's been that way ever since.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, it's an industrial park essentially.
Right.
Yeah, different businesses.
Yeah, a lot of different businesses of one type or another. Many of them fairly small.
I want to show.
I'm sorry, Jorie, go ahead.
This for 1953, which is our centennial, Kankakee centennial year. They had a lot of great ads for a lot of different companies, and I just thought this was interesting layout. You can clearly see
Yeah,
the factory laid out.
Yeah, they've got the aerial shots of it.
And the different things, a couple examples of the different types of things that they showed. And I'm standing in front of the microphone. I'm sorry. Apologize.
That's
Let
okay.
me show you.
I love the headline of what it says from one old timer to another.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah, because obviously Florence Stove was a very old company at that point. So
it's amazing how spread out this factory really was.
Yeah, in Kankakee it was.
When
so
you go
on
the west side of Kankakee and you look at the nothingness behind the fence, you really get a good picture of exactly how much space this factory took up, and how many people it would have employed, and all the different things that they would have come to manufacture.
That speaking of how many people was involved, I think we may have touched upon the issue of labor problems.
Yes, I know. My grandfather was laid off in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's what you're referring to or if it was before that. Or...
Yeah.
Actually, going back as far as 1966, the workers at the Bradley plant went on a 13-week strike.
Oh, wow.
And as a result of that, apparently the Kankakee plant was forced to close. I don't know whether it's because they were not able to get materials from one to the other or not.
And I assume it had to be for better pay. And
I think so,
right?
Yeah.
In 69, another strike shut down the Kankakee rubber plant. So you had a lot of, from the 60s through the late 70s, you had an awful lot of labor unrest in Kankakee. There were a couple problems that led Roper to eventually bail out. One was the inability to come to worthwhile agreements with some of the labor unions. The factories were old and outmoded and inefficient. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, was the excuse they used at least to
on
decamp.
The national level, the economic times
That's right.
of the country, did the deep recession that was in the 70s that lasted into the early 80s.
That's definitely so,
And from what I read, Roper, they said they stayed too long and just could not recuperate. They said they should have bailed earlier.
Right.
And let the employees know earlier that this is not profitable for us anymore. At these locations, we need to regroup and leave. And then telling the people that that's never an easy thing to do.
No, that's right.
Some of them did relocate, though, right? Maybe
to Lafayette, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lafayette plant was built in the 70s as looking toward the future but in 72, Roper workers went on strike again after 9 weeks of negotiations. They weren't able to get together on that. Mm-hmm. In August of that year, the workers turned down a contract offer by a 3-to-1 margin.
Ooh.
And it kept rolling. The strike just kept going. Finally, in November, they approved the contract by a 4-to-1 vote.
Okay.
But I think that was pretty much the death knell.
And by this time, you had all the major manufacturing companies kind of either bail out, empty.
Late 70s, early 80s were very bad times in Kankakee.
And through all out the Midwest manufacturing.
Right. Oh, left.
Yeah, it was very difficult on a national scale, on a regional scale, statewide. I also read that the city of Kankakee wanted to up the contribution of utilities that they would have to pay. So that was an extra for lights and for gas and water and and all that stuff. And there was an extra burden on them. So a lot of the companies were just having too much
right.
of a difficult time. A.L. Smith, we didn't even talk about that. A.L. Smith also had a difficult time.
As well.
Yeah. Yes, they did. I remember.
So that's what happened to the manufacturing base for the most part.
That's right.
National and then regional and then state and then local. They just couldn't handle all the
Just an idea of how bad it was. In 1983, in February, the county's unemployment rate was 21.4%.
Oh, that's large.
And so basically 1 out of every 4 workers was.
So when we do these podcasts and we talk about Bear Brand and Roper and Kraler, that touches a lot of people's pocketbook at the time.
Yes.
That they were related in somehow or knew somebody who was a part of one of these companies doing the manufacturing for the war, for the people, for for the area. Yeah. And while it was good, all the companies were good, and they were good for quite a long time. But then you had things beyond their control that did them in.
Right. Do we know if Roper is still in existence?
It is, and it's a subsidiary, and I can't remember, a fairly good-sized, like Whirlpool or something like that.
Whirlpool, yes, that's the one they bought it. They bought it. I read that.
They still manufacture, as they had Lafayette, and I think they have another plant somewhere in Tennessee or somewhere down there. I don't recall. Jorie mentioned earlier something, the fire at Bradley.
Yes.
And that was Area Jobs Development Corporation. Was a not-for-profit that was created when Bradley was given given the plant there, and their mission was to serve as a industrial incubator. Small companies that were startups and so forth, came and rented space at a relatively low cost and so forth. And they had quite a few. I think there were, at the time of the fire, which was in 1986, there were like 600 people working in, I think, 35 or 40 different small companies in that space. Originally, the oldest section of the Bradley plant, closest to the railroad tracks, going back to the original, that had been torn down in 85, maybe into the beginning of 86, because they were clearing space. It was really too outmoded to use for anything. But Area Jobs was in the middle of refurbishing a lot of the existing plants. The new roofing and new.
Yes, they were doing new roofing. Come to think of it, around the time of the fire, they were doing that.
Yes.
Is there a connection between the fire and the roofing?
Yes, there is. Overheated tar kettle was blamed for it, and there were do you have the picture of the postcard?
Yes.
Yes, the buildings that are the 2 buildings on the right now. I think that those were the ones to the left of the sign were had been torn down, but those 2 big buildings and several other buildings are the ones that caught fire.
Okay.
And in fact, I think maybe the one that is at the far right there, it's about a 4 or 5 story building. That was where the roofing work was being done.
Yep.
And of course, these plants were, even the newer ones, which newer in this case probably was, maybe 1920 or so. They weren't steel beams holding up the floors. They were wooden joists.
Yes.
And they had been busy drying out for almost a century.
Yeah.
And so the fire just ripped through them. It destroyed, I think, 6 buildings. Luckily, the buildings that are furthest to the east were modern warehouse buildings, and they still exist and are still very well, rented out and so forth. But Tony Perry, who was the head of Area Jobs, was a very dynamic former realtor, and he was just a promoter like mad. You wouldn't know. Tony was an interesting guy, and he would go out and practically speaking, drag a company president into saying, "Look, what's great space we've got here for just so much space." And it said after the fire, he was quoted in the newspaper after the fire the next day saying that he had already found replacement space for 7 or 8 of the companies that were damaged or that were destroyed by noon of the next day.
Wow.
So
yeah, I've heard some stories about him. He was a go-getter.
He was, yeah. He and Jeff Bennett, who is still active in
right.
real estate work, but Jeff was, he and Tony worked together on a lot of projects.
Right.
So of course those buildings that were survived are still in use for the same reason they were going to be. Mm-hmm. And then looking at the other day, 2016, Roper Kankakee disappeared.
Yeah. Here's another
millions of dollars worth of
the West Kankakee, more modern.
Yes, that's the modern office building area. The newest building of Kankakee Roper was the corporate headquarters on
still there.
On the curve from, and that was. No, I don't have it, but
50s,
anyway, that was.
I think
It seems 50s. To me it was in the 70s at some point that was built. It was about a 9-acre space that, and it was a beautiful building, and now it's owned by donated to Riverside, and then they use it for various things. I remember getting my first COVID shot there.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I forgot that part. That was part of Roper. So I guess a piece of it is still around.
Right.
Yeah.
Just that's the only piece left as far as Roper Kankakee.
Yeah. We always called it the Hoover building.
The Hoover building. Max Hoover. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I forgot about that one. But yeah, and I can't believe it's 2016 is when they took it down.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been almost 10 years already.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many $1 million it cost to demolish
I can't remember.
those things.
I remember it happening.
Yes.
And I can't remember I can't remember someone bought the property and then they paid to have it taken down, or if the people that already owned it decided I can't remember what.
I can't recall either who paid the bill, but it's a vacant space and continues to be. Right. And just beyond that, to the west, was another industrial site that's gone, Gould National Battery.
That's
which,
right.
Kind of interesting in relation to the all the information about Goshen.
Oh, right.
another battery factory.
Yeah.
But they made submarine batteries there.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a lot of interesting history in Kankakee areas. Industrial background.
We had it all. Had pretty much a wide variety of manufacturing. This is probably one of my favorite topics, just because there's so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's so much going on for a good chunk of our history.
Yeah, we've got a lot of manufacturing history, and I think that's what keeps us going and bringing in new things. And
so I'm going to try to bring you all to the different locations that are still there, that are not still there, and kind of bring it up close, more personal, along coupled with the talks that we have on the podcast to kind of tie it all. Because my YouTube things are about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you join in with our podcast, and then you're always welcome to contact me, and I'm happy to do more in-depth research.
Jorie is a wonderful researcher.
Yes, she is. So are you, Jack. And both of you are amazing. So thank you.
We just like digging in old stuff.
Yes.
I do too. I enjoy it as well. So thank you both for coming back and talking Roper, stoves, and lawnmowers, and all the above. And it's just, I didn't realize there was so much intertwining and just such a, like you, what did you say, a tattered, or I can't remember what analogy you used earlier to try and describe all the.
It was interwoven.
Maybe that was
whole Sears had its fingers in everything.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it was just fascinating to learn how all that worked.
In my checkered past, I did a lot of work for Sears. I used to do a lot of training and technical writing for them.
I didn't know that.
Freelance author.
Okay.
And so I would go up to the tower and get all these kind of neat projects to do, videos. I wrote a lot of video scripts and
that's cool.
Things of that sort. And they were such fun. So I learned a lot about Sears. Now they got involved in things.
Oh, that's fascinating. All right. Well, we encourage everyone to go check out the Kankakee County Museum. Something I failed to mention, too, is the revamped or new sports exhibit is going to be opening here at the museum soon. So that's something new to check out. French Heritage Museum will be opening back up for the season. There's always something going on. So we just encourage everyone to just, take some time. Go through it. I promise you'll find something that fascinates you. So, yeah.
Thank you for having us. As always, we enjoy sitting down with you and interacting with each other and trying to remember what was that? I can't remember. Do you remember? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. There's always something. You finish the other sentence. So.
That's right.
That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please tap that subscribe button if you haven't already. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Jeff and Rosa Carroll for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to this month's title sponsor, KCC's Office of Continuing Education and Business Partnerships. You can learn more at kcc.edu/continuing ed. Other sponsors that proudly support the podcast include Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, Nana's Bakery, and Stafari West Avenue. Kankakee Podcast is produced by Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. You can learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries